Essen, March 1943. A Deutsche Reichsbahn freight yard under blackout rules. A steam locomotive backs onto a line of coal wagons because the war still runs on fire. Inside that tender is a mountain of fuel, enough to keep steel moving when gasoline is rationed and trucks die by the roadside, saying, "Now put one fake lump into that pile. Not a bomb on the rails, not a charge on a bridge. One piece of coal that looks right, smells right, even leaves dust on your fingers." A stoker shovels. The firebox blooms white, and the locomotive is destroyed from the inside. Germany builds war locomotives because rail is the bloodstream of the Reich, and coal is the oxygen of rail. A single engine can carry tons of coal in its tender, meaning tons of trust, fed into a furnace, shovel by shovel, hour after hour. So here's the simplest question. Why would Britain try to win a continental war with something as small as a fake lump of coal? Because what you're about to discover explains how sabotage doesn't have to be loud to be strategic, and how one quiet device was designed to turn Germany's greatest strength, its logistics, into a trap. But first, you need to understand what a steam locomotive really is. It isn't a train. It's a mobile pressure vessel, a metal stomach that eats fuel and drinks water and converts both into force. Coal goes into the firebox, heat goes into the boiler, water becomes steam, steam becomes pressure, pressure becomes motion, and that pressure is the point. A working locomotive is controlled violence. The boiler is designed to hold it, the fittings are designed to vent it, the crew is trained to fear it. Now imagine what happens when a hidden charge detonates inside the place where heat and pressure already live. You don't just damage a train, you crack the heart of a system. That's why the idea of explosive coal keeps coming back in war. It's not about the lump, it's about the boiler. In the early 1940s, Britain is staring at a map where almost all of Western Europe is under German control. London can't roll tanks into Paris, but London can ship problems into furnaces. So the Special Operations Executive is told to build tools for irregular war behind enemy lines. Tools that can be carried, hidden, explained in one sentence to a resistance fighter, and used without a machine shop. One of those tools is explosive coal, and it is exactly what it sounds like, an explosive charge disguised as fuel, meant to be introduced into coal supplies feeding locomotives, furnaces, power stations, and factories. There's a reason the planners focus on coal instead of some glamorous spy gadget fantasy. Coal is everywhere in a coal economy. Coal moves constantly. Coal is handled by tired people who don't have time to inspect every lump. Coal also concentrates risk, because coal doesn't just sit in a bin. It gets shoveled into a confined space where heat is extreme, metal is stressed, and steam pressure is waiting. That's the perfect environment for a small device to cause an outsized failure. And it hits a kind of target that doesn't get headlines but decides wars, maintenance. A bridge can be repaired, a track can be relayed, but a locomotive with a ruined firebox, warped tubes, cracked plates, and injured crew does not come back fast, especially in a war where skilled labor and spare parts are already under pressure. Now zoom out. The German war economy is not only factories, it is distribution. A weapon in a plant is useless if it cannot get to the front. And the German industrial economy depends on coal moving on time, in the right quantities, moved by rail and inland waterways so factories can run and armaments can flow. That dependence creates a vulnerability you can attack without ever seeing the front line. So the people designing this device do not think like movie demolition experts. They think like system breakers. The question becomes, how do you make the enemy spend resources guarding something they cannot stop using? You cannot tell a continental power, stop burning coal. So you contaminate the idea of coal. That is the real genius here. Explosive coal is not just a blast, it is suspicion weaponized. If you're watching this, drop one comment right now. Do you think fear is a weapon, yes or no? Because by the end, you're going to see why fear of a single fake lump can force an entire security response. And if you want real history, not myths, hit subscribe, because this story is not about a magic trick. It is about industrial nerves and how to cut them. Now, to understand how Britain's fake coal was meant to wreck German locomotives from the inside, you need to understand how the device was actually built and deployed. The simplest version begins with a brutal insight. You do not need a huge charge if you place it in the one place designed to be full of fire. The early concept is practical. Agents can drill into real coal, hollow it out, place explosive inside, and then disguise the opening so it still looks like an ordinary lump. But that approach has a problem. Reliability. Coal is brittle. Coal is messy. Coal shatters. So the concept evolves. Instead of drilling real coal, you make fake coal. You mold a shell from a hard substance. You shape it to match local fuel. Then you coat it with real coal dust so it looks right in the light and feels right in the hand. This matters because coal is not one universal texture. Different regions produce different shapes, different sheen, different fracture patterns. If your fake lump looks like it came from the wrong mine, it stands out. And here's the part people miss. You do not need many. You do not need to supply an entire coal system. You need to create uncertainty. Because once the enemy believes coal can be weaponized, the enemy has two bad options. Option 1, treat coal as normal, accept risk, and keep the system moving. Option 2, guard and inspect coal supplies, slow handling, add checkpoints, add manpower, add paperwork, add delays. Either way, you are spending something, either equipment and lives or time and soldiers. And in war, time is a resource you cannot buy back. Now let's walk through what wrecked from the inside means in physical terms. A steam locomotive's firebox is a chamber designed to burn fuel efficiently. A stoker shovels coal in. Air is drawn through. Flames and hot gases flow through tubes running through the boiler. Water around those tubes turns to steam. The boiler is a giant metal container under pressure. It is engineered, but it is also stressed every minute it operates. If an explosive device detonates in that environment, the immediate blast can tear the firebox and damage tubes. But the bigger danger is secondary failure, rapid release of pressure, structural cracking, scalding steam, fragmentation, and fire. And because locomotives carry fuel and water and lubricants, even a small internal detonation can turn into a multi-system casualty: engine disabled, line blocked, crew injured, depot disrupted, repair shop overloaded. That is the difference between a bomb goes off and a network bleeds. Compare that to the classic sabotage approach. Blowing a track. A track bomb is visible. It screams sabotage. The enemy sends repair crews. They harden the obvious points. Explosive coal is quieter. It does not attack the rail line. And it attacks the assumption that the rail line is safe because the engine is safe. And that changes everything, because now you have to consider security at the level of fuel handling, not just infrastructure. Now zoom out again, because coal is not only locomotives. Coal is power. Coal is heat. Coal is industrial furnaces. If you can push a device into the coal supply of a factory, you are not just delaying transport. You are attacking production directly. If you can start a coal bunker fire aboard a ship or at a depot, you create a disaster that is hard to contain. Not because the flames are mystical, but because coal fires are stubborn and dangerous to extinguish. So the fake coal concept is versatile. Locomotive firebox, factory furnace, power station, coal depot. Which is why it fits the behind-the-lines reality. Resistance networks need compact sabotage options that can be smuggled, cached, explained, and used opportunistically. But here's the catch. All sabotage faces the same question. Not, can it work? But, can you actually get it into the target? And this is where coal becomes a perfect infiltration medium. Coal changes hands constantly. Mines to rail, rail to depot, depot to tender, tender to shovel, shovel to fire. That chain has weak links, and those weak links are humans under stress. A single sympathetic worker at the wrong point in the chain can do more damage than an entire team trying to breach a guarded facility. And the planners understand something deeper than explosions. Sabotage is also psychology. Once the rumor spreads, every coal handler becomes a potential suspect, and every coal pile becomes a potential crime scene. That creates paranoia inside an already stressed workforce. It creates friction, it creates delays, and friction is what kills high-tempo war economies. Now, you might be thinking, did it work? Did fake coal actually destroy German locomotives from the inside at scale? The hard truth is that specific operational records for individual disguised devices are often incomplete, and even when devices are known to exist, it can be difficult to separate confirmed detonations from accidents, wartime mechanical failure, and rumor. But that is not a weakness of the story. That is the story. Because in logistics warfare, measurable kills are not always the metric. The metric is disruption per unit of effort. If the enemy must divert guards to coal yards, slow locomotive fueling, and add security procedures, then the device is already achieving a strategic effect before it ever explodes. And if even a small number of locomotives are taken out at the wrong moment, during a surge, during a redeployment, during a coal shortage, during winter, then the ripple effect can be bigger than the blast itself. That is the part people miss. Sabotage is not always about destruction, it is about timing. Now consider what Germany is forced to do as the war progresses. Rail remains critical for moving heavy goods and military supply, and the fight increasingly becomes a contest over production and movement. Who can build more, move more, and keep moving under attack? In that environment, the idea of poisoned fuel is not a gimmick. It is a strike on the system's heartbeat. Now go back to the yard. The stoker does not know politics. He knows heat. He knows rhythm. He knows that if he starves the fire, pressure drops, schedules die, and punishment follows, so he shovels. Fast. That is why disguised sabotage works. It turns ordinary competence into an attack vector, and it also turns discipline into vulnerability. Because the more the system demands speed, the less time anyone has to question what they are feeding into the fire. Now, zoom out to the German side of the ledger. Wartime rail is already strained, engines run hard, repairs are constant, depots are overloaded, crews are exhausted. In a constrained system, small disruptions compound faster. A locomotive lost is not just a locomotive lost. It is a schedule broken. It is a freight backlog. It is a factory waiting on coal. It is a front line waiting on ammunition. And if the network is running close to the limit, then one break becomes three. That is the trap. The trap is not that Germany cannot build trains. The trap is that Germany cannot afford uncertainty in the flow of coal and transport. So Britain's fake coal is best understood as a pressure tactic, a way to force the occupier to choose between vulnerability and overreaction. And overreaction is often the win, because every guard sent to a coal dump is a guard not sent to a bridge. Every hour spent inspecting fuel is an hour not spent moving freight. Every rumor forces commanders into new procedures, and procedures are slow. There is another layer that makes this nastier. A successful internal boiler attack can look like an accident. Boilers fail. Steam systems fail. Wartime maintenance is rough. If a locomotive blows, the first instinct is mechanical explanation, not enemy action, until the rumor spreads. That ambiguity makes it harder to respond intelligently. If you treat it as sabotage too early, you waste resources. If you treat it as accident too long, you take repeated hits. Either way, you are playing the saboteur's game. So when people dismiss devices like explosive coal as spy theater, they are missing the logic. This is not about theatrics. It is about systems under stress. It is about forcing friction into the one thing a modern war cannot tolerate: movement. Now, let's answer the title in plain language. Britain's fake coal was designed to wreck German locomotives from the inside by turning the act of fueling into the act of sabotage. A disguised charge, introduced into ordinary coal supplies, would be shoveled into the firebox and then detonate in the confined heat and pressure environment that keeps a steam engine alive. The blast would damage the firebox, compromise boiler components, disable the locomotive, injure crew, block lines, and impose repair burdens and security friction across the network. And then, even beyond the explosions, the deeper effect was psychological. Once the possibility existed, coal handling itself became a security problem, slowing a system that already lived on the edge. Now you understand why it was a battlefield. Because in total war, the line between front and rear disappears. A locomotive is a weapon when it delivers shells. A coal pile is a strategic resource when it keeps steel moving. And a fake lump of coal is a weapon when it turns the enemy's own routine into a detonation. So, what would you do if you were the German officer responsible for rail security? Would you slow the system to inspect coal and risk missing deliveries? Or would you keep the trains running and accept that one lump might destroy an engine and kill its crew? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for real history, not myths, explained through constraints, logistics, and consequences. Thanks for watching.